say something?
Hello.
Fantastic. All right. We're recording. We're good to hook. Um, Couple of quick, just Discord general things. You should all be able to see the Nerub-ar Palace channels. Um, the like ver- the very short versions of some of the things that we're going to talk through are going to be in there, and all of these raid plan links are all going to be available in the raid plan links channel. Um, so you can expect those to be added in later this evening. But wanted to take no more than like 5 to 10 minutes per boss. And we're not going to spend a ton of time on Queen Ansarek simply because it's Queen Ansarek and we don't really know what's going to happen. We did post, or I should say, Holy posted a um, like thought piece boss guide from Ready Check Pull, which is largely theory at this point, but I think is going to be a good starting point. For the earlier bosses, we're going to zoom through some of these. Uh, by all means, please don't feel like you can't just jump in with questions. So just like yell at me, okay? Um, with that, let's dive right in. And of course, officers, I know you're out there. Feel free to come on top. So um, Ulgrax is the first boss. He is a very straightforward first boss. There's really only three mechanics that matter, other than me not being able to spell. Um, so the fight will have pools on the ground. Don't walk in the pools, right? Fairly straightforward. There's a tank swap that used to be a frontal, but's now more straightforward to manage. The main mechanic of the fight is loose space management. Um, he'll put rooting webs on the ground that if you touch them, you get rooted. It's attackable. So think Tindril, right? You can break it with your own personal movement, but it does consume the root. And if you can't break it, your friends will need to break you out. So just don't touch the things on the ground. Um, People will get hit with digest venom, which will just target a random player, put a big green circle around them. If you go stand with your circle overlapping the root spots on the ground, it'll get rid of them. So if you're targeted by digest venom, you just go stand next to some roots outside of the raid and plop it down. And you're just saving space. P1 is fairly straightforward. The only other mechanic that really matters on Ulgrax is the jailer style soak mechanic. Um, this is a split damage mechanic that if not enough people soak it, you get you just die. Like if I think if fewer than 6 people soak it, you just keel over. So make sure that you're getting in the circle on normal and heroic. We could just be in the circle on mythic. We'll have to make 2 groups. But you soak the thing, and then you have to run against. The number of people doesn't seem to change the impact or magnitude of the pull. So regardless, if you soak the thing, you're going to have to run against it. We'll have movement cooldowns assigned for each of these soaks. But it's just a don't get pulled into the boss. If you do get pulled into the boss, you take a ton of damage. But make sure that you are in the large soak mechanic for the devoured soak. We'll have
Is it the
reminders for that.
same?
Oh, go ahead.
Is it the same exact mechanic as the eye from Sanctum?
Uh, in concept, yes, but on I, more people soaking meant you got pulled less. Here, the pull is the same. If it's 6, if it's 12, it's a pull.
The
Um,
dungeon journal does say the strength with which Ultrax pulls
it's
players is
it
reduced.
is it is effectively nominal. Like
Okay.
there's another pull mechanic where it matters, um, but for this, he's just gonna pull you. For normal and heroic, we're gonna shove the hole right in there, because the split damage is super easy to manage against, and you can't go near the boss during this anyway. So melee, who would normally be losing uptime, you just are going to be running against as opposed to standing still twiddling your thumbs. On Mythic, we'll have 2 assigned groups. On Heroic, we'll also use 2 assigned groups. just for ease of use. But that's really it. That's phase 1. Very, very simple. Phase 2 is kind of a Razageth style dodge fest. There are ads and the boss is doing strafing runs. He'll spawn a big purple portal in one corner and a big purple portal in the other corner, and he'll just shoot across from one portal to another. Don't be in the line of the portals. It's just like the Razageth breaths, fairly straightforward. During this, ads will spawn. You kill the ads, and they drop this viscera on the ground. Viscera, you just pick up as a DPS, and you just grab it. You'll move it over to the boss once he spawns. Initially, the boss won't be here. He'll be flying back and forth. At a certain point into the phase, he'll land back, usually opposite to where the ads spawn. So if the ads spawn in this corner over here, he'll be like polar opposite where that is. But whenever you kill the ads, they'll drop this viscera. You pick it up, gives you an extra action button. You move close to the boss, press your extra button, you feed him. Until you feed him enough, he's just gonna basically take no damage and do large pulsing AoE damage that increases over time to the raid. So make sure that you're grabbing the viscera and bringing it across. We won't have assignments for this. If you see viscera and you have movement, get it. Warlocks, this will be a great place for a Warlock gate, especially on Heroic and Mythic, where we're going to need to take it far. So just a great spot. It's not really worth putting it down until we know where the ads spawn. So it's not something where we can just have like a gateway down and know where we're going. But that's it. Once you feed him, he'll come back to regular P1 and you just do P1 again. Every time you go into that phase, he hurts more. We shouldn't see that phase that many times. The only other thing I will add here is on Mythic, there's a Mythic ad that has a cast that we'll need to kick, which again, we'll just use our assigner weak aura for that. You shouldn't have to do anything too crazy there. So this fight is just don't get webbed, kill ads in intermission, feed the boss, resume P1. It's fairly straightforward. Anyone have any questions on Ulgrax? This is a pretty simple first boss here. All right. Bloodbound Horror. So Bloodbound Horror is, I think, Volcaros, but done right, at least on paper. So we'll split the raid into 2 halves. So half the raid will be on, like, let's call it platform A. Half the raid will be on platform B. We'll have assigned left-right groups the same way we did on Volcaros. The main mechanic here is you're alternating an upstairs-downstairs phase, like on Anduin. So the boss will cast a frontal towards where he's going to spawn some ads. The group that's close to that is going to go downstairs, get hit by the frontal. You actually want to get hit by the frontal, just like Anduin. Go downstairs, and there will be some ads to kill. The group that's upstairs, you're just dodging stuff. There will be like a very straightforward beam mechanic, like take beam out of raid. It's not a beam from the sky, it's tentacles from below. So if you get grasp, just move out of the raid. Outside of that, you're just moving slowly around the room, dealing with a beam mechanic, and making sure that you're slamming that boss. Both groups will ultimately go downstairs, so it's a mix of like light 3-target or 2-target cleave and single target on this fight. But the mechanics themselves are very straightforward. In the downstairs phase, there are 3 types of ads. There's a big tank ad. There's a quote-unquote spawning ad. And then there are the little ads that spawn. The little ads will run from the spawning ad to the boss. If they reach the boss, they detonate and hurt people both upstairs and downstairs. So we're going to want to slow those, root those. And this is where like the true AoE comes in. We'll have a kick order for the tank ad, and we will have a little ad loose CC assignment. It's not going to be people, it'll be classes. So mages first, then hunters, then evokers, etc. The tricky part of these is they spawn in pairs. So like the tank ad will spawn down here with one ad spawning ad, but there will also be another ad spawning ad up here. So you'll need to kill one, bring the tank ad to the other, continue to kick it, kill the other. The added difficulty of this is a big beam shoots out from the boss and travels counterclockwise around the room. As that beam goes, you can control where the beam spawns in a very precise way, not control like in air quotes on Rashok, but it is perpendicular to the boss's facing. So I know it's really hard to see red on red right here, but if the boss is looking over here at the tank, it'll be 90 degrees from that. So it's always perpendicular to where the tank is. So as the tank, if you were to stand down here, right, and the boss was looking this way, the beam would go like this and continue to move counterclockwise and run over the group that's down here killing ads. So the only real like tank mechanic is after every frontal that sends a group downstairs, the upstairs tank needs to position on their platform such that the beam spawns like right after where the ads were. There will be little purple swirls on the ground that show you where the ads are spawning, so it should be pretty intuitive whether you're an upstairs or downstairs group where you want to be. But that's pretty much it for the ads. One of the things that we're going to toy with, depending on how fast the beam moves, is let's say that the configuration spawns like this with the tank ad and one spawning ad down here and another spawning ad up here. We might bring the tank ad up here first because the beam is coming this way. So if we bring the tank ad up, kill this ad first, CC the one down at the bottom, we could end up just being able to do it in one rotation of the beam as opposed to having to like follow it around. It just depends how fast it moves. My suspicion is that we'll have enough DPS to not really have to worry about that. So the tanks, you really just have to spawn it so that it's just after where the ads are.
Or nor.
Thank you, Atlas. The only other really relevant mechanic on this fight is he'll do like this very large circle AoE. You just have to run out. There's kind of this like blood and viscera on the ground. Just move to the outer ring. There's like this inner ring and an outer ring. When he does this mechanic at 100 energy, you just move to the outer ring. This will be a no uptime part of the fight, but we just got to move out. Every time he hits that phase, he does more damage. So again, it's there's not a formal enrage, but there's kind of a slow burn mechanic. On Mythic, it has just a spread out mechanic. He'll cast a thing that puts a circle on everyone. They all detonate at the same time. We just need to do a loose spread over 6 yards so that we don't get smushed. Fairly straightforward. It won't always be exactly like this, but that's pretty much it from Heroic to Mythic. Anyone have any questions on Bloodbound? This again is a fairly straightforward boss outside of the nuances of tank positioning and like which ad group do you hit first.
Will there be any value in like if we happen to have two locks in at the same time, to splitting them up in different groups just to use lock portals for like that movement between like the inner ring and outer ring, inward or outward?
Yeah, and I believe I don't know on Anduin. Your Warlock Gate existed in a phase, like upstairs and downstairs were different phases, if I remember correctly. So like you have to place it once you go down. You can't see like the purple swirlies of where the ads are going to spawn, drop it, and it will follow you down. Like you have to get downstairs, place it, and then go. But yes.
Thank you.
It's worth noting that I'm like 95% sure that you can actually attack the boss in both phases. So if you have like split keep and stuff, it's very.
Yes, yeah, the boss is attackable. I'm not sure how far, like, Volcaros had a hitbox that extended, like, this far into the platform. Like, this was all, and, like, even back here was melee range. If this boss is the same, where it, like, bleeds onto the platform, you can be cleaving the boss while hitting the ads, but it just depends, like, does it just touch, or does it come up onto the platforms for his hitbox? So we'll have to see. But yes, he's attackable in both phases. But only the downstairs can hit the ads. Okay. All right. That's Bloodbound. Sikron, this is going to be a cool fight. This is even the boss room is a callback to the fight in right before Pantheon. I can never remember her name, but where you had like the rings that you had to run across. This boss is all about positioning one mechanic so that it's easy to hit with another mechanic. 4 players at a time will get targeted by something called phase blades. They'll want to run to like a little quadrant of the room. Like if you draw lines coming out of this, you'll want to run to one of these quadrants, drop your 4 phase guys. You don't want to line them all up along the edge here. You want to drop them in like in a layer of 2. So like 1, 2, 1, 2, in columns, I should say. The reason that we want to do that is we have to clear them with another mechanic that the boss does, and it's really helpful if they're in columns and rows as opposed to just one big row thing. We detonate these at a later time. They're not attackable, but we detonate them at a later time. When we blow them up, they do some initial damage to the raid and put a dot on the raid. When the boss blows them up, it does massive damage to the raid, so we want to make sure that we're not leaving any behind. We'll talk about how we do that, but this is basically just a take mechanic out of raid, rest of the raid chills in with the boss. There's a second mechanic called Decimate, which will target 3 people. So 4 people get the images, 3 people get the lines. With lines, you want your lines to pass through the images, and that will remove them. So if you aren't targeted by these lines, you want to, again, continue to dodge. If you are targeted by the lines, you want to make sure that you're hitting the images. You should be able to, like, if we drop these cleanly, we should have 2 columns of these things. We should, on normal and heroic, we should generally be able to clear them with 2 beams, and so this 3rd beam just kind of needs to fuck off and not hit the raid. But if there is, for example, like a 3rd one down here, this person would want to position so that they're hitting that one. But the dance, once these break, they do leave a puddle, like a permanent puddle on the ground. So the dance is, we're slowly moving around the room, changing where we drop the phase blades, and then blowing them up with Decimate. On Mythic, there's a different rhythm as opposed to phase blades Decimate, phase blades Decimate. There are going to be more of them, and we'll have to do some fun geometry with the lines. The only like real difference that matters outside of route planning is you can't stack 2 of these on each other. If they're within 5 yards of each other, with whatever invisible circle exists around them, when they blow up, the raid takes massive damage. So we have to keep them loosely spread, and we'll just get comfortable with kind of that. It's the dungeon journal is misleading here. If you look at it, one part of it says 8 yards. So Collapsing Nova, if another simulacrum is within 8 yards. And then up here it says Cosmic Simulacrums explode into a Collapsing Nova if within 5 yards of each other. So I don't know if it's 5 or 8, but they can't be close together. So just as a quick taste of what'll be in Mythic. But this is, again, a space management fight where it's purely single target damage, but we're managing quote-unquote ads with a line mechanic from the boss. Does anyone have any questions on Sikron?
I have a question. Do you know if the lines extend after you, or is it like do I have to go to the edge for it to hit the 2 shadows, or if I just like stand in the front and it just passes through me?
Yeah, you're talking like, do they have the Sarkareth effect? I don't think they do. I think it'll pass through you and extend in perpetuity. But we'll learn. I haven't seen anything that says that they do that, so my assumption is they don't. But I guess we'll know when we know.
You said doo doo.
Yes. Yes,
I have a
did.
question too.
Yeah, go ahead.
If in some world we leave one behind, are we just kind of SOL at that point, or is there like a world where we can clean one up, say if it's like one of the far outside ones?
I mean, again, like if we do it right, we should be able to always do it with two. This third.
Yeah, I'm not
person could
advocating
hit.
missing any. That's for sure.
No, I know. This third person could be like a cleanup line, so we're not forever doomed. The boss's other mechanic is they do this thing called like a. I don't see it on here, but a large sweep at 100 energy. Any of the things that are still up do giga damage. It is livable, and on heroic, I think the pattern even goes like we clear 2, we clear 2 more, and then the boss clears 4. And we just have to heal through that. So it's not the end of the world, but it does make that moment where the boss clears 4 way more punishing. And early when we don't have a big health pool, that'll hurt. So the short answer is the cleanup line should aim to clean them up. It's not like we have to stagger it or do anything like that.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely not advocating any laziness with it, that's for sure. Okay.
Cool. Any other Sikron questions or comments, team? Alrighty. Let's talk Rashawn. Or Rashanan, rather. So, Rashanan is a dungeon boss and a raid boss. Some of you guys have probably already fought this dungeon boss. There's 3 main mechanics here. One is geometry. Another is ground denial, like circles and webs on the ground. And then a third are tether mechanic. So there's kind of 3 things happening in parallel. Let's break them down. So one is the line mechanic. So on normal and heroic, 2 people, and on mythic, 3 people will get targeted by whatever this mechanic is, something waves, acidic waves, and you'll get like a line on your character with like a little shaded bit that extends out in one direction. The shaded bit indicates which way the wave is going to crash. So this wave is going to go this way, this wave is going to go this way, because the shaded bit is emanating that way from the player. Conversely, if the configuration looked like this, where the shaded bit was facing in, this line would go in, and this line would go in, and the whole raid would get run over. Getting run over is really bad. It stuns you, I think, for like 2 seconds. It does a ton of damage. So it's a damage loss to get hit. So definitely don't get hit. But basically, if you're a person that's targeted with these waves, you need to figure out which way your wave is going, and then move such that your wave won't crash over the raid. One of the things that the wave interacts with is there will be pools or puddles on the ground that tether you to them. If you get tethered, it's not the end of the world. It'll be like every quest where you've had to pull a plant out of the ground. It won't feel good. And when you snap your tether, you'll do raid-wide damage. So the fewer people that get tethered, the better. If a wave crashes over a tether circle, it turns that tether circle into a little pool of acid. Pool of acid better than tether. So with these waves, you don't want to go to Africa with them. Like, you don't want to move all the way to the edge of the platform. You want to position such that you're not hitting the raid, but that you are getting rid of the tethers. It's kind of a dance. The third mechanic are those acid pools, and they exist. On Mythic, you make a triangle, so one person might crash forwards or backwards, and the other 2 are going to go out at angles, so the raid would stack in the safe spot in the middle, but it's the same mechanic. You have a line going through you figure out which way your raid is or your line is going, and then you move such that they're flowing away from the raid. Okay? While all that's going on, so the boss is putting swirlies on the ground. Those swirlies turn into web pools. The waves crash over them. They turn into acid. The boss will target 4 players with eggs. those players will spawn a bunch of little ads that fixate and do put a stacking dot and vulnerability on people. We want to group these up. We want to group them. We don't necessarily want to stack them. On normal and heroic, if they're pretty tightly stacked, it doesn't make a big difference. On mythic, if they spawn on top of each other, they go crazy. So we want them like generally in front of the boss. This circle is just an indicator for the front of the boss. We don't want them all right on circle, but we want all 4 people that get targeted with the eggs to move together in a little group. These just get AoE'd down. That's it. We'll have like a very simple stun rotation. But this is just a very straightforward make ads go bye-bye. The last mechanic, this one, is exactly like Eye of the Jailer, where the boss will put a big circle on the ground. It's on the ground, not a person, and it'll pull you off the platform. The Ulgrax pull will pull you to Ulgrax. The Rashanan pull will pull you off the platform. So this one is going to feel just like Eye of the Jailer. Same thing. On normal and heroic, you soak it. On mythic, we'll have an assigned order for these things. But for now, soak thing. The last piece of the puzzle is enveloping webs. Enveloping webs will be this frontal mechanic, where if you get stunned, or if you get hit, you get stunned, and you have an attackable cocoon on you that we need to kill to break you out. So just dodge. It's a very straightforward frontal. You just move to the sides, and you can avoid it, no problem. This is on Mythic only. The other change on Mythic is the people who are getting targeted by... on normal, it's random areas. On Heroic and Mythic, it's on specific players. You're going to want to take those out, and we'll put a map of like the general proposed positions. But you're going to want to take the webs out so that they're kind of out of the way, off to the side, where the waves will hit them. On Mythic and Heroic, the people who are targeted will always be tethered, so we'll always have 4 tethers to snap. On Mythic, the wording is ambiguous, but our assumption is if you were to... we're going to do some live editing here. If you were to put the tethers in a line, right? Doesn't matter which way the players go. My assumption, this is like Rev's thought, I don't know if this is correct, is that the green box would explode when the first person from the 4 web things breaks their tether. So if person number, so if we have 4 people here, if we have 4 people, if person 1 or 4 breaks, but 2 or 3 are still in the quote-unquote danger zone, they'll die. It does an unlivable amount. It's like 17 million damage. It's unclear if this danger zone is based on the middle of the 4 things. It's my assumption, based on reading, that it is, such that, let's say the configuration was like 1, 2, 3, 4. My reading of it, and again, I don't know if this is right, is that the danger zone would be here. It's also possible that it would tether to the players. So as the players are snapping, they become the corners of the danger zone. Whichever it is, don't be in the danger zone. It's fairly straightforward. But again, that's Mythic only. We're not going to encounter that for a little bit. The last thing to call out with this fight, and then I'll open it up to questions, is at full energy, the boss just scoots to a different part of the platform. There are, like, she can go kind of anywhere along here, even on like the edges over here. So it's random. So once we figure out where she's going, we'll drop a gate, we'll use movement, we'll get over there. She'll be channeling a cast and dropping swirlies. we kick her, and then she'll immediately cast enveloping webs, or sorry, not enveloping webs. She'll immediately cast web reeve. So it's not a race to see who can get there first and kick as fast as possible. We have to get the raid over there so that we can be ready to soak and then kick. But then it just goes back to phase 1, the other mechanics that we've already talked through. Let me pause there for questions, thoughts, comments, debunkments of my theories.
I'm just assuming that the wave works exactly the same as in the Dawnbreaker. So the person that has it, of course, are you just expected just to get slammed and stunned? Same way.
As what?
Well, in that one, it's the same thing. Like if you have that wave, you get stunned. Like you can't not
Oh.
get stunned. So I'm just assuming that's like defensive, whatever. It's same thing, yeah. Or do you know?
I don't think it's going to stun you.
Okay.
Players splash by
does.
the initial.
During
Oh, no,
testing,
it does.
you're
No, you're
guaranteed to
right.
get hit by it.
You're right. Yeah, players splashed by the initial corrosive eruption are caught in acidic stupor. So yeah, so it does 4 million. So you'll just need a personal. Yep. Yep. Just need a personal.
I think we should make a rule where anyone who fails geometry has to like donate like 1,000 gold or maybe 10,000 gold.
Yeah, 10,000. Make it sting.
7 million.
Yeah. I mean, the geometry in normal and heroic is truly like, is it left or right? On Mythic,
You
it's a
get one. You get
triangle.
one. I was gonna say you get one free week. Next
Yeah.
week, you're banned.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah,
a question about enveloping webs.
Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
In the raid plan, you have the raid split on either side. If we do that, does that not just screw the wave mechanic? Like if someone, like, would it not just potentially just go bad?
These pools don't persist long. Like the boss channels a cast and spits all this shit out, and then it goes away. Like,
Okay,
you just
cool.
have to dodge. You just have to dodge the frontal. Like you would then collapse back in, and you would go back to kind of like this picture.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
But good question. Okay. That's Rashanan. We're going to keep moving. This boss looks like it's going to be cool. There are 3 phase 1s that are all kind of race against times. There are eggs. We hatch the eggs. The eggs turn into ads, and we kill the ads. This one's a lot of cleave and a lot of boss damage. It's also a race against time. The first thing the boss does at the start of the fight is whichever one of these you're in, it starts a big pool emanating out from these little red things growing in like a circle away from the thing. I didn't turn the fade on, did I? That's why we can't have nice things. But the first thing the boss does is it starts a little pool growing outwards. So you can't just ignore the ads. You have to spawn the ads. If we're delinquent in spawning the ads, we get the mythic mechanic ads in lower difficulties, which is bad. So we don't want to deal with the mythic ads until mythic. On mythic, we get super mythic ads. But so there's 3 quadrants. This is a quote-unquote build-a-boss boss where you could go to like one of the 3 quadrants first. Each quadrant is a little bit different. There are 3 types of ads. We'll talk about them. The top quadrant has more tank ads. The right quadrant, or I say quadrant, the right third has more caster worms, and the bottom left from current screen has more fixate ads. The general consensus is that the fixate ads are the worst ones. So ideally on normal heroic, we just go from section 1 to section 2 and then the boss is dead. If we do have to deal with these little ads, I mean, we'll have to deal with the little ads always, but what this bottom section does is it forces you to deal with 2 sets of little ads at a time. But the ads are pretty simple. The tank ad, which is a spider-looking guy, just hits the tank. It hurts. We kill them. The worm is immovable. It just stands and casts. You could think like the Gahoon worms from Underrot. They exist, they cast, they don't move. You gotta kill them and kick them. The little ads, these guys will spawn, I think, 6 little ads that will fixate players and get faster over time. They will put a nasty dot and do a lot of damage to people if they connect. So don't let them connect. But basically, the whole thing is we'll hatch some eggs intentionally before the purple goo touches them. Then we'll kill those ads and continue DPSing the boss. There's a map, just like all things where we're spawning eggs. So each section of the room is always going to be kind of like a cluster of 4, a cluster of 4, and then a line on the edge. And then you'll go to the next section. Cluster of 4, line on the edge. And then you'll go to the next section. So we'll be putting world markers down in each section of the raid to be like, okay, this set of eggs is next. Now we're going to this set of eggs. But you can see, like, the top section here has, no matter what we're doing, we're getting 2 tank spiders in each one. This bottom section over here has 2 worms in each one, no matter what we do. And then this one over here has 2 little ads in each set, no matter what we do. So, on Heroic, again, we'll go group of 4, group of 4, group of 3. On Mythic, we'll have a snazzy map week aura. On Heroic, we're just going to use world markers. But again, we just want to keep the little ads slowed. We can use stuns, and we'll have kick rotations set up for the worm guys. The boss will generally be brought. Will be brought to the caster worm, because everything else moves. Like these move, these move, these move. So the boss will be brought to the caster worm. When we're in the worm side, the boss will be brought to one worm, it'll die, and then it'll be brought to the other worm. But that's it. We follow the map. We haven't talked about how we spawn the eggs yet, so let's talk about that. Let's say this is the pattern of eggs. 4 players, there are 3 here, but 4 people at a time will be targeted with a experimental dosage. That dosage will need to be brought to an egg in order to spawn it. So if there are going to be 4 people that get dosages every time, there are going to be 4 eggs that we need to hatch. So if you get dosage, you need to stop what you're doing and go to an egg with a marker on it. We don't want to double up. We don't want 2 people on the same egg. We want to spread it out and spawn all 4 eggs that we want to spawn. So that'll take a little bit of like growing pains of figuring out where people are going. But again, it's 4 random people. Could be healers, could be DPS. We don't know. So everyone has to be ready to participate in this. We can't just assign a couple people to deal with it. So if you're targeted by dosage, you got to be ready to hoof it to the eggs with a world marker on it. On Mythic, more people get targeted with this effect, and 2 people have to group up to spawn a set of eggs. So on Heroic and Normal, we want everyone at 1. On Mythic, we want everyone in pairs, but there will be more people with the debuff. On Mythic, there are also mutations for the ads. The ads will be faster, the ads will have quicker casts and be harder to kick, or the ads will slowly deal ramping damage to the tanks. So the ads are just worse. On Mythic, they have twice as much health and do twice as much damage, as well as whatever the 3 things that I just said were. So once we've dealt with all of the eggs in one section, the boss will reach 100 energy, and we'll have to bring the boss to the next section, and then we'll repeat over there. Because again, this section will be fully covered in goo. And then we want to kill the boss before we run out of space. That's pretty much it. The last mechanic is there's an annoying dispel mechanic here. We have a macro for it because it's a private aura. And you have to be safe when you're dispel. So rather than queuing your mic and saying dispel rev, you can just press your macro when you're ready, and the healer that's assigned to you will get a glow that says you're safe. So when you have the dispel mechanic, volatile concoction, walk out of the raid, press your Dispel Me macro, and you'll get dispelled. Pretty straightforward. Does anyone have questions on Brood Twister? Hell yeah. All right. That brings us to Kaiveza. Kaiveza is cool. Kaiveza is a ramping fight where each phase, the mechanics are largely the same, but there are more of them. So in phase 1, 3 people will get targeted with a thing that causes them to drop an after image and then shoot a projectile out. So the very first time it happens, there will be 3. As we progress through the fight, there will be 4, and then 5, and eventually too many, right? The common wisdom is we have this very nice, like, 6-prong hexagon in the middle of the room. We just are going to put world markers down on each of the vertices of that hexagon, and if you get targeted by Queensbane, you just go to the ones which are opposite the boss. While that's happening, there's a suck-in mechanic towards the tanks. So you can see here, like, if you drop your Queensbane at star, you want to move around the room so that if I'm a player who dropped my Queensbane at star, I want to bait my charge such that it will travel through circle. If I drop my Queensbane at circle, I want to bait my charge such that it's going through X. Same thing over here. Again, you're just baiting it around the hexagon, such that it won't hit the person baiting here, so everyone's is like passing through but not hurting the raid. The tank wants to be on the opposite side of where all of this shit is happening, because the whole raid gets pulled towards the tank while that's occurring. But again, we'll kind of circle around the room as we're going here, just dealing with the drop-offs. There are 2 intermissions in this fight. The first intermission is all about dodging shit. There are Sarkareth-style lines and Farak-style lines, as well as like large frontal-shaped triangles that go onto the ground. We just dodge shit. They happen pretty rapidly, so it's just like dodging blazes and dodging frontals, but there's 2 frontals, not just 1. We dodge all the shit in the intermission, and then we go back to phase 1, but there's more. Now there are 4 ghosts instead of 3, right? But we do the same thing. We just continue to bait them around in the circle. So if you dropped the star, you bait it towards circle. You dropped the circle, you bait it towards X. The boss, again, this is where the charge shit is going to happen. The tank and the boss are just on the opposite side. And we do this little song and dance in a big circle forever and ever. Eventually there will be too many ghosts, and what we'll do is we will die. We do the same thing again, intermission 2, continue to dodge, and then we go back, but this time there are 5. So we keep the boss on one vertex of the hexagon, and then the ghosts go on all the other ones, right? And then we do the same thing, where you bait your charge around the line, and the boss should be at the very last one, so that they don't get run over. But we just build this little clockwise ghost mechanic for Kaiveza. There are some other mechanics, but this is really the crux of the fight. If we can do this right, all the other stuff is fairly straightforward. Anyone have any Kaiveza questions? Hell yeah. All right, Silken Court. This one, I'm gonna hazard to say it's like Stone Legion Generals if Stone Legion Generals was good. Generally, it's a 2-boss fight. Unlike Stone Legion Generals, where you only fight one at a time, You're always fighting both, but their mechanics change each phase. So phase 1 is going to be, again, it's quote-unquote 2-target cleave, but this boss teleports around the room and this boss charges around the room, so it's going to be hard to stack them together often. There are some adds, but this is largely a single or 2-target cleave fight, not a multi-target fight. There are 3 phases with 2 intermissions. Each boss has their own specialized intermission. And phase 1 and 2 have different mechanics. Phase 3 has all of the mechanics from both phases 1 and 2. So again, kind of like Stone Legion General, where it's like part A of a fight, part B of a fight, parts A and B together. Okay? So phase 1 is all about stopping the boss from charging across the room. We don't do that the way that we've typically stopped charge mechanics, where we just throw our bodies in front of it and hope it works. There are going to be these little bombs on the ground called web bombs. These web bombs are going to pop when you touch them and tie the 2 closest people together. This tie together mechanic functions much like the hose on Nerub-ar, where you stay tied together as long as you stay within a certain distance of each other. If you go too far, you snap your tether. So the main mechanic of this phase is the melee boss will do a charge mechanic across the room. We need to stop the charge. If he touches the wall, we die. So what'll happen is we'll have 2 people, or 4 people, I should say, assigned to pick up a tether, walk across, stretch your tether such that you're not getting hit by the charge, but the boss is going through the tether. The boss will charge across the room, hit the tether, get stunned, take a shit ton more damage for 10 seconds. So you have a little fun burst window there. And then it's just back to the fight as normal. The number of tethers that the boss has to pass through goes up by 1 each difficulty. Raid Finder, probably 0. Normal, he has to go through 1 tether. Heroic, he has to go through 2 tethers. Mythic, he has to go through 3 tethers. So we'll have on normal 2 people assigned, on heroic 4 people assigned, and on mythic 6 people assigned. So we just got to get used to that rhythm of right before this boss hits 100 energy and is going to charge, go get your tether, stretch it across his line. They don't have to all be like 1, 2, 3 together. He just has to pass through 3 total tethers. Once he does that, he gets stunned and takes more damage. The boss will summon little adds. These adds fixate. We want to drag the fixates such that they go through the big boss and we can just cleave them down. This boss is teleporting around the room and is just spamming a ranged bolt on whichever tank currently has aggro. It's annoying. That's about it. The only other thing, there were too many shapes to put on this slide without hurting your eyes, but the melee boss also does have a frontal mechanic. Don't get hit by it. If you do get hit by it, you get impaled. I think we're all familiar with impale mechanics at this point. You're stunned forever until your friends kill your thing. So don't get hit by the frontal. It's big. Like, if he's facing inward, it will cover, like, this much of the room. Probably wider, even, right? So just be ready to move, and we don't want to face the boss such that his frontal is going to go through the middle of the room. We want to maximize our space like that. Okay? But phase 1 is just kite the little adds through the boss. Tether people will stretch their tethers and run them across the room. That's pretty much it. The only other thing is, just like on pretty much every boss ever, there will be people will get a circle around them. Don't hit your friends with your circle. Many people will get a circle at the same time, so just loose spread, don't kill each other. That's phase 1. Intermission 1 functions a lot like Soul Render did in Sanctum. there's a little dance that you do. So each of these colored sets of triangles goes together. So like 2 is all of dark green, as an example. The boss will jump to the middle of the room and get a big shield. This is a damage race, so we do want to be hitting the boss and breaking the shield while we're doing this. The boss does this until we break the shield, and it does more damage every time and gets faster. So what happens is the boss will spawn in these webs on the ground. You can stand in the webs. The webs don't hurt you. The boss will then detonate the webs in the order that they spawned. So let's say they spawn white, dark green, monk color, hunter color, right? If they spawn in that order, they'll detonate in that order. So white, dark green, cyan, hunter color. What that ultimately means is you're just going to stand in a section with a web, wait for the section that spawned more recently to detonate, and then walk there. That's it. So it's going to be... It's a memory game, but with spider webs. So you don't want to be in a section when it erupts. If you are in a section when it erupts, you take a shit ton of damage, and if you get hit again, you'll die. On Mythic, it's super punitive to get hit by any avoidable mechanic. So let's learn the dance. These don't always spawn in this like nice line order. It could be 1, 3, 2, 4, right? In which case we would just stand in 2 and move into either 1 or 3 once they erupt. But it's a memory game, and we'll need to know which section is going to be safe and be ready to move right or left from where we are. But the general disposition is if you stand in one of the ones that you saw spawn 3rd or 4th and get ready to move into a safe section, you'll have somewhere to go. It'll never be like if I'm in 3, either 2 or 4 will be safe. It's impossible for me to get boxed in. But that's it. We just have to break a shield while dodging some floor mechanics. Phase 2... Actually, let me pause there. Phase 1, Intermission 1. Give folks a chance to ask questions or add commentary. Okay. Phase 2 is similar to Phase 1, slightly different mechanics. The charge doesn't happen. There's a new mechanic that we have to deal with, which is centered around dispels. This is... So, Venomous Rain still happens. We have to spread out, then collapse back in. The new mechanic in this phase is called Stinging Swarm. Players will get targeted by a dot. It ramps up over time. If it gets to 5 stacks, you get stunned. So, depending on the timing of the fight, we need to pass this back and forth. When you get dispelled, it jumps to the closest person. Or it jumps to the caster boss. The caster boss will go incorporeal and start casting a large raid-wide death mechanic. I think we can live one of them if it goes off. If it does more damage on the second one. The way that you deal with this is the dispel people will accumulate stacks and then go stand next to the boss when he's being incorporeal. Get dispelled. All the debuffs will go onto the boss, and he'll get stunned. And not cast his thing. So the dance is just get your debuff, live with your debuff, pass it to your friend if you're going to get 5 stacks. When the boss jumps to the middle and casts his thing, you go stand near the boss so that there's not someone closer to you than you are to the boss. Then you will do the dispels, all the dispels will be assigned, and then the boss will get stunned. The other mechanic change here is... rather than put web bombs on the ground, the boss will pull everyone to a location and then do a big AoE on that location. When you get pulled in, you'll get tethered to the person that's closest to you. That's closest to you when you arrive, not closest to you when you start. So there's not really a good way to bait it yet. Maybe people will come up with some tech. You want to, in phase 2, you can just snap your tether. We don't need them. Snap it. Doesn't matter. But you get pulled in, and then you're going to have to run out before the AoE happens. It functions exactly like Sludge Fist. However, unlike Sledge Fist, if you snap your chain, you don't die. You actually want to snap your chain. The frontal still happens. The boss still teleports around the room. The ads still spawn and we have to bait them through. But rather than the charge and the web bombs, we get the web suck in and the stinging swarm debuffs. Okay? Intermission 2 is going to feel a lot like Kurog. Whereas Intermission 1 was like a triangular web pattern, Intermission 2 is expanding circles, just like the stone phase of Kurog in Vault of the Incarnates. The circles will start small, they're random, they're not baited on a player. Like, one of them could spawn over here, and then it'll get bigger, and bigger, and bigger. But they stay kind of thin. Again, same thing, so you can dodge out or in. Generally, in is going to be safer. But they can overlap each other. Like, this one will grow, and then there will be like a little safe wedge here. But then this one will grow again, and it'll cover this whole area, and this one will grow, and it'll cover this whole area. So you'll end up with a lot of overlapping circles. It's a dance. And we again have to be damaging the boss and breaking his shield. This happens until we break the shield. There's not really anything too crazy to say other than don't get hit. Unlike Intermission 2, it's more punishing if you get hit. You not only take a shit ton of damage and die if you get hit again, you also get impaled and have to be broken out. So don't get hit. Pretty straightforward there. Phase 3 is put all of it together. You have the Stinging Swarm debuffs that you have to bring in and use to stop the boss from casting. The boss charges, and you have to make him pass through tethers. The web pull, everyone gets pulled together, and we have to keep some of our tethers to use to break the charge. We don't have web bombs on the ground that we can pop ourselves and trigger tethers. So the hard part of the fight is managing your tethers in P3. In P2, we don't care. You snap them. In P3, we need you to identify who your partners are, and if they're assigned, you need to hang out with them. We're working on a weak aura that will make this happen. I don't have it working yet, but it exists in principle. This fight, again, Phase 3 is just putting together Phase 1 and 2. You have the Stinging Swarm and the charge and the web pull. You push all of that together and you've got P3. So this one will be a just push, 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 go, go, go situation. I still think, despite all that, this is a Lust on Pull boss, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think that we need to save Lust for this last phase or anything, but I could be wrong about that. But that's still in court. Does anyone have any questions, thoughts, comments, fears, anxieties? Witty remarks?
I'm scared of this boss in general. I'll just say it. But I also believe in this, but I am scared of it.
This one will be a learning curve. Again, the penultimate boss and Queen are going to be much harder than everything else in here. The difficulty jump up for Kaiveza is also kind of high. There's a lot of different like positional requirements here. But again, if we do the dance, we should be pretty much good to go. I didn't cover all of the Kaiveza mechanics. There are other things that go on here with the death marks and the rifts and things like that, but the biggest thing is the dance. If we can do the dance right, we're chilling. Let me pause from my long monologue here. Any boss, any thoughts, any comments that folks have? I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. I'm hoping that if folks do have questions, we can knock them out now as opposed to as we're running through.
Do you mind any questions about like general raid prep?
Yeah, that's where I'm going next. So unless anyone has anything else, real quick, we'll just open it up to the group. Then yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Shadow.
Okay, sorry, I was giving it a second. As I just want to understand as far as like consumables like food and
Mm-hmm.
pots and flasks and stuff like that, what's being provided and what we should bring. And forgive me in advance if this has been posted somewhere and I'm not just remembering on the spot.
Yeah, so our plan is to continue to provide pots, flasks, and feasts starting Mythic Week. I think there are a number of recipes that we need from delves or from the raid to make that happen. So we have naturally not acquired all of those yet. I think once we have them, we should be rearing to go for next week. I think for tomorrow we will have flasks for folks, and we should have feasts. But as far as pots, I think have some pots ready, even if they're like shitty quality ones. I don't think we're gonna need them for normal, but they'll be very helpful on heroic. But again, in the long run, we'll be providing anything that is cauldronable or feastable. That was the whole point of our Mount Sail jaunt last expansion.
Feels weird that you're calling that last expansion, man. Oh my gosh.
Okay, well, on that note, a couple of quick logistics things. So, real quick, just on the, let me, So, if you haven't already looked, we do have a loot prio sheet that exists based on the current breakdown of our comp. This link is available in the raid links and raid chat channels. I believe it's pinned there, if I'm not mistaken, alongside the expectations. So give it a peep. The biggest thing with loot this go round is going to be we are going to have our traditional tier prio, and we're also have a rough prio. This isn't as set in stone as tier for trinkets. There are a few trinkets which are everyone's bis, no surprise. I imagine that they're going to be tuned. So we have a rough order based on class more than anything at this point, as far as kind of how all of that balances together. We'll be using this sheet to track. Everyone should be able to edit the details on the left for certain columns, right? So you shouldn't be able to edit the prio. You'll get a there was a problem issue. But if we award you a helm, I'm going to come in here and update I awarded Villainy a helm. If you got a helm and we didn't update it, please update it. Our ask of everyone is don't send your Omni token and your Catalyst unless you are completing a 4-set. So our prio for this tier is going to be to get, like if we're looking at the Dreadful token, right? Week 1, you can just get 2-piece with Catalyst and your Omni token. So if we're working our way through the Dreadful token and Turtle gets a helm from normal and a chest from heroic, he's now going to be removed from the prio until we fill the rest of the Dreadful token with loot. So then we would come to Villainy, he would get a shoulder from heroic, gloves from normal, he gets removed from the prio, right? Once you send your Omni token, please update that you sent your Omni token and put what you did, and just go forward from there. We're going to be using this to track. This is not going to be a long-term thing. This is just making sure that we're optimally allocating tier at the start to get everyone their 4-set as fast as they can. I will repost the link to this just so that folks don't have to dig through the pins to find it, but know that it exists. It's largely updated for each token. I think the only exception is we may see some very slight shifting in Venerated at the 11th hour. And I do want to emphasize that the Trinket Prio is not like a rank order of people. It is by class in no particular order. Warlocks won't always exclusively be Boa before Shadow before Cell. Or, mages won't exclusively be Bid before Taco, right? Or Taco before Bid before Kieran. It is just in class bands. So I would encourage folks not to read too much into that. It's just the order that Rev typed them in. Outside of that, again, I can't emphasize enough your crafts and your catalyst and your Omni token. Until we at least make it through normal and heroic, please don't send your crafts. You might think you're not going to get a weapon, so you're going to craft it, but we might get 4 of that weapon type. So save your spark. Make sure that you're getting as much item level as you can headed into Mythic Week, and do the dance. The only other thing I want to emphasize, and I know I posted about it in the Nerub-ar Palace, we have our updated pack. We have our utilities updated, and we have the K's weak aura, all 3 linked. You do not need any other weak auras. You don't need to install liquid shit or Northern Sky shit or anything else. Just make sure you have all 3 of these, and make sure you don't tinker with their load conditions. Because some of them are dependent on each other. The WoW API was updated heavily in 11.0.1. And so many functions that weak auras relied on have been deprecated and no longer work. So if you previously had a working version of K's and you haven't updated it, please go update it, because it's broken, right? If you have an outdated version of buffs and utilities and you haven't updated it, please go update it, because it's broken. So just make sure that you update all 3 of those prior to tomorrow. Everything, and I mean everything, is tied to the anchors. So don't move the individual auras in the pack, just move the anchors, and everything else will move with you. Outside of that, again, make sure you have your add-ons updated. Get ready for some server wonkiness tomorrow. If you do have questions about loot, please let us know. And again, we are aiming to have everyone with their sims loaded into WoW Audit, and please be ready with your sim during the raid as well. When we provide or open things up for roll, the RC is going to require you to add notes if something is BIS, if something is a major or minor upgrade. You're required to add the percentage. You can't just click it and send. The game just won't let you do it. So please be ready. Include those percentages. As kind of cold-hearted as it is, if you don't include the details, you probably won't get the piece. So come ready with those sims, and just be